After the sermon today, I want to focus us in on point number one. And I think that's really Paul's main point, is that pastors need to stress the gospel. As we look at what is non-negotiable about pastoral ministry, it's kind of like, duh, of course, it's the gospel. But Paul spent verses 4-7 stressing the gospel so that a pastor who stresses the gospel will see people's lives change. So there should be a direct connection between the gospel and obedient lives. But here's the danger that happens out in pastoral ministry. You'll have guys who really stress the gospel, but don't say anything about obedient lives or say very little. So as a result of that, the people that kind of preaching and teaching creates are people who are worldly and are and really don't care much about the gospel, that it's license. They don't care much about obedience. Or there are others who really stress obedience, but the people that they create are really prideful. Or they are just completely doubting their salvation constantly because they could never meet up to that standard of obedience that the pastor keeps pressing on the consciences of the people. What we need is an aggressive stress on the gospel in ministry. You put those two things together, a stress on the gospel with a priority of obedience, not either or, but both and you create balanced Christians. You create Christians who are not legalists on the one hand, who are seeking to earn their salvation, keep their salvation by their good works, who are completely dominated by good works so that it makes them arrogant and prideful, looking at others who aren't. Or it doesn't create Christians, people in church who are given over to license, kind of living however they want to live, and God forgives, so obedience doesn't matter. No, what Paul is showing at the end of chapter 2 and at the beginning of chapter 3 here where we are, I guess kind of in the middle, is that it's gospel and obedience, not either or, both and. And when they come together, you see something beautiful. And you really see that in the New Testament, right? You don't see Paul talking about the glories of the gospel and salvation and all that God did to save people and then go, as to the stuff that you need to do, well, you'll figure that out because you have the gospel. No, he gives direction. He gives direction for marriage. He gives directions to parents and children. He gives directions to people out in the world, at your job. He gives direction all over the place because the gospel produces a certain kind of life. So it's not either or, it's both, and that's the Christian life. Aggressively gospel-centered, which creates a priority for obedience. Why? Because at the end of the day, how do these two things come together? They come together because we love the Jesus that saved us, and our love for him is seen in lives that are obedient to him. It's not either or, it's both and. That's what we hope to see. That's what I hope you see in this text. That's what I hope you see in your Christian life. That the more that you love Jesus for dying for you, rising from the dead, saving your soul from hell, the more that you will seek to live for him out of gratitude, out of a joy that your sins are forgiven. I hope you see that. And so as pastors here at Redeemer, we just kind of teach the next text. So the only choice I get is really which book we preach through. And then from there, God takes over the leadership and we just follow his lead as we go through books of the Bible. Some parts are going to be all gospel. That's what we've been seeing for the past 5 weeks as we've gone through chapter 3, verses 4-7. Today and throughout the rest of the book, we're going to see the effect of the gospel on people's lives. And you don't want to miss that. So we'll see you next time. Take care.